Well, we saw Alex Crawford reporting from Madagascar a little earlier. It's not the only country experiencing drought and hunger. Elizabeth Wathuti is a Kenyan climate activist and founder of the Green Generation Initiative, and she took part in the official opening ceremony, where you spoke, Elizabeth, so movingly about your fellow Kenyans, some 2 million of them now facing climate-related starvation. Both rainy seasons, you explained, had failed. Have you heard anything here to offer you comfort or indeed solutions to what you're seeing in Kenya?
When I spoke at the opening ceremony, my expectations were that the world leaders would listen and then feel the heartbreak and the injustices that have gone into the climate crisis and then move into the COP for the next 2 weeks and make the right decisions. But right now, the clock is ticking on COP26. We came here to Glasgow to do what must be done. We came here to get it done and to get it right. But looking at the latest text draft, for example, it's supposed to keep 1.5 alive. But the only thing that this text draft is doing is getting us to 2.4, which is disastrous for communities like mine that are already facing the worst impacts of the climate crisis. So it will be so sad for us to leave Glasgow, hoping that the leaders will come back again next year to get it right.
Well, we'll see if that happens, certainly. We heard the Kenyan representative, what they called a plenary this afternoon. We bleed, we cry, he said. This is a matter of life and death, not a statistic. We bleed when it rains and cry when it doesn't. What is life currently like for you under 1.2? What might it be like under 1.5 or even under more than 2 degrees?
I already mentioned of the over 2 million Kenyans that are facing climate-related starvation. And this is a problem about our rains have not yet returned to our land. People are facing a food insecurity crisis as well. Children are struggling to go to school. And in fact, in parts of the country right now, it's flooded because the weather patterns have become so unpredictable and they've become also very disastrous. And so it is a great problem because most of the food that we also consume right now comes from agriculture. But yet the farmers cannot know when to plant or even when to harvest. So it means that a 2.4 degree warming definitely is a death sentence for countries and communities like mine that are already going through the worst impacts right now.
Well, as part of your opening ceremony speech, you also said by 2025, in just 4 years' time, half of the world's population will face water scarcity, and in 25 years' time, 86 million people in sub-Saharan Africa alone would be displaced. Now, that has big implications for migration, for society, for where those people go, and indeed even for conflict of the future. I mean, it's destructive for culture and community.
Absolutely, and it is important that people understand that this crisis goes beyond the borders. Because once our communities get impacted by this crisis right now, it's also going to affect the countries in the north as well. And I'll just give a good example of the food crisis. Most of the food that's being consumed in the north right now in the supermarkets is being produced in most countries in Africa, for example. It's being produced by women who are greatly impacted by the crisis right now. So it means that if our crops continue to fail, if our harvests continue to fail, it's also directly going to impact the countries in the north. So I think what is most important is for people to understand the injustices that have gone into this crisis and the fact that the countries that are facing the worst impacts right now have least contributed to historical emissions and then provide the justice that is needed to tackle this crisis.
And that was reiterated today, wasn't it? 20 countries with 80% of global GDP produce 80% of global emissions. Is this just about getting money for adaptation to live with what you're experiencing now, for loss and damage, the sins of the past in terms of emissions? Will money go a long way to help, or is it even more than that now?
It's more than the money. It's about the reality check right now, what is happening to our countries. And what is really painful is the fact that we have not yet understood what is going around in countries that have least contributed, because these communities need food, these communities need water, these communities need to survive, and the children need to live their hopes and dreams without fear of the future. So unless we understand that it goes beyond this, then we'll not be able to provide justice for these communities. And I think what is most important right now, even in the latest text, it's very weak on loss and damage, because we have not recognized about this loss and damage. We do not want to put it on the front lines, and yet communities that are on the front lines of this crisis are the ones that have to go through the worst loss and damage. And if we make the wrong decisions at this COP26, they are the ones that will continue to suffer. And of course, these communities need climate finance, but it has always been the broken promises. It's always been the pledges, and yet these had not been fulfilled. And even at this COP26, what we are seeing is more broken promises, more commitments that we do not even have trust that they will be fulfilled at the end of the day, because they have failed in the past.
Elizabeth Wathuti giving voice there to the people of Kenya. Thank you.